Hey guys, Preston Bill Comic Book University, and we're going to be talking about X-Men's Apocalypse versus Dracula. This is a four-part miniseries. This was April, May, June, and July, respectively, in 2006. That's when this came out. Now, writers. The writer is Frank Thierry. Pencils, Clay Henry. Ink, Mark Morales. Colors, Will Quintana. Quinte? Anyway, sorry, bud. And VC's Russ Wooten was on lettering. So we're just going to try and muscle through this. I don't have too much time today, unfortunately. So check this out. We're going to start off in Romania, 1459. All right. This is when Dracula was fighting the Turks. Now, guys, if you want more of a history on Dracula, and this does change things a little bit here, all right, but if you want more of a history on Dracula, go and check out attached link below. Dracula Explained in a Minute on Comic Book University. It's actually a lot longer than a minute, but you're talking about a guy with a whole lot of history all throughout history. So, yeah, let it go. Let it go. He has a lot of history. That's a bad sign. So, Radu, which may or may not be his brother, it doesn't seem like it's his brother, but he did have a younger brother named Radu. So there's probably just some other guy named Radu. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. It completely destroys continuity. Anyway, he goes and says, "Listen, Dracula, you're doing, Prince Vlad, you're doing great against these Turks. The problem is, I see the Riders on the Storm in the future. That's what they used to be called. So I see the Riders of the Dark, on the horizon. It's like, that's all just mythology. That's just superstition. Shut up." He's like, "Really? Well, then what am I looking at here?" And he's like, "What? Let me see." And he looks, he's like, "Oh, crap." So these guys come through. Dracula had already pretty much wiped away, and he was routing the Turks at this point. So the riders come through and just, "Get out of here, Turks." And come through, and they come right after Dracula and his armies. Why? The reason why is because Apocalypse is in charge of the Riders of the Storm, and he's always been about protecting or testing mutant kind. But there were a couple times in history where he's awoken to protect mutant kind because he wants them tested, but he doesn't want them eradicated. Dracula is one of those people who was so ridiculously powerful, he was getting more powerful as a human, that that Apocalypse realized, I've got to call this guy, because he's going to wind up destroying everybody. If he gets out there, he's going to be like a Genghis Khan type of character. He's not going to stop. So yeah, yeah. He goes up, and he's got his riders with him, but he's also got his horsemen with him, and the Horsemen of War puts together these two axes, takes Vlad down quickly, and he thinks he kills him. But then he gets up, he's like, "You're not, no, face me." And Apocalypse comes up, he's like, unbelievable, and just stomps on him. So he assumes that he's dead. Now again, check out Dracula Explained in a Minute for more on exactly what happens here. The story's been retconned several times. This in and of itself is a retcon, but it doesn't hurt anything. Dracula did originally say, "You guys can't kill me. You're some unnamed person, and I'm Vlad. Vlad Dracula. You can't stop me." So the idea that he was some unnamed guy, the Horseman of War wasn't named here, and he didn't know who Apocalypse was. So there's that. Anyway, so now we're going to switch over to London, 1897, and two detectives are over top of the body of this dead librarian. And they're like, "Dude, there's several people like this." And they're comparing it to the Jack the Ripper thing. It's like, Jack the Ripper was just some scumbag with a knife. You know what I'm saying? He was cutting people up. How did they drain every single drop of blood out of these people? How is that possible? And only two little marks on their neck. Also, a little burn mark on some part of their body. That's the weirdest thing. Like, well, this one is a little bit different. It doesn't have the burn mark. But what it does have is a tattoo. Now, it's actually the tattoo of Clan Aqaba. We'll get more into that in a little bit if you don't know who that is. And one day I will do Apocalypse Explained in a Minute. So, suddenly this dude, Detective Jack, shows up. Detective Jack Starsmore. He shows up, he's late, and they're making references. "Hi, you came here all the way from China? Ha ha ha." He's like, "Shut up, man." So he shows up and he's like, "Oh, it's just some stupid mark, whatever." He's like, and the one detective is like, "No, this actually looks like a hieroglyph." like those Egyptian kind of markings. No, it's nothing. Okay, yeah, but there's also the Alexander house over here who claims to be this huge, authority on hieroglyphs and everything ancient Egyptian. It's like, no, it's nothing. It's like, dude, we're going to go and check anyway. It's like, ugh. So he tags along. So all three of these detectives are sitting down, and there's this freaking huge muscle-up guy named Hamilton Slade, and he's the head of the Alexander house. And he's having a conversation with them. They're all drinking tea and whatnot. It's London. Let it go. Right before 1900. Again, this is 1897. So mind you, this is also before the modern day appearance of Dracula in Marvel Comics, which would have been not Tales of Suspense. I'm thinking Suspense, which is back in 1951. More specifically, which is the Gene Colan drawn Tomb of Dracula. There we go. That was actually the first modern day appearance of Dracula. So that would be after this. So this is a prequel to that. And what happens here is that they're talking, and Hamilton Slade is having a conversation with him about, oh, hey, check it out. Yeah, there's this, there's that, these other things. All these crazy things are happening. The history of that mark that you're talking about, that's Clan Aqaba. There are people who have come. They're related to this being called Apocalypse. He's kind of like their god, but he's also their relative. So they're scions of this god. Anyway, they've made their mark all over the world, and they're travel here and there, whatever, and they're basically the fittest of humanity. And the two main detectives there, not including Jack, they're just like, okay. And the one is a real butthead. He's like, well, like, if there's a god, and the other guy's like, I thought you said you were going to let me talk. So they're trying to be really polite. This guy's like, one of the 1%ers. They could absolutely destroy these guys. That's one of the things that Jack Starsmore suggests. These guys could destroy you, could destroy your careers. So stop. Don't do it. Anyway, Hamilton goes on to explain how the larger the mark on this individual, anybody with this mark, it's a natural mark, depending on how much of Apocalypse's blood you have in you. And if you have just a little mark, well, then you're a lesser, you're a nobody. You know what I'm saying? Pretty much. You've got some kind of power, but you're not really that powerful. But if you've got a gigantic mark, you know what I'm saying? The bigger the mark, the more of his blood you have in you, the more powerful you are. So he takes off his shirt, and you see a gigantic mark across his check. I mean, Superman's, symbol is like that big compared to this thing. It's like, boom. He's like, so what do you think that makes me? And they're like, So they pull out their guns like, you're stupid. So he grabs the one detective, extends his jaw much like a constrictor snake would, and just actually gulps him. And rips off his head and spits it out. The other dude's like, bow, bow, bow. The bullets just like stick in him. He's just like, get these things out of here. And he turns into, he manipulates the molecules of his body, molecular rearrangement, much like what Apocalypse does, and is able to just, he chops him up. So then he turns around and he grabs Jack by his neck, Jack Starsmore. He's like, He's like, you know that what you just said was blasphemy, right? Because he says at one point, so basically, I am Apocalypse because I've got so much of his blood in me. Look at the size of my mark. And he's like, shut up, man. He's like, why do you go and bring these guys to my house? It's like, I tried to dissuade them. They weren't listening. So this guy is obviously a member of Clan Aqaba also. He's like, you were supposed to be stopping these guys. He's like, listen, I went around and I found these bodies, drained of blood before these other knuckleheads did. And I was burning the mark off of them. The tattoo of Clan Aqaba, I was burning that mark off of them. But this one, they wound up getting to it before I did. It's like, yeah, it's because you're stuck in those opium houses all the time, the Chinese opium houses. That's why you're late. So that was the reference to China before. So it's kind of true. It's kind of true. Anyway, so he's like, Jack is like, listen, I think that we should summon him. And of course, he's talking about Apocalypse. Hamilton's like, no, that's not going to happen, dude. That's not going to happen. On top of this, I just want to let you guys know, real quick, for those of you who are huge Ghost Rider fans, like the original Ghost Rider before Johnny Blaze, this is no relationship to Hamilton Slade and all those from back in that day. These are not the same. The one who went after Mockingbird and all that stuff. These are not the same Slades. This is a very different thing. So Hamilton Slade it's just a name they decided to use, and it was probably a poor choice of names. Anyway, just because of the confusion here. Anyway, so Hamilton goes out to search for the killer himself. He's gone for 3 days now. So that's the end of book 2. Book Excuse me. The end of the end of book one. The end of book one actually ends with they decide the rest of the clan decide they're going to summon Apocalypse. She's like, who dares? So the sarcophagus of regeneration is actually there in the Hamilton house now. It goes all over the place wherever the clan basically is. Book two opens up with Starsmore is in an opium house and he's out of it. And all of a sudden, this dude comes up and is like, there's this guy who's looking for you. He's really insistent. He's like, hey man, like I'm on my high. Don't mess up my high, man. All of a sudden, this old dude comes in. He's like, you need to wake. He's got this knife in his hand. He grabs the opium pipe out of his hand. He's like, you need to wake up now. He's like, So really messed up. So then we go into Alexander House. All these cats are lying around or sitting around at this big table waiting for Apocalypse to show up. They're waiting for the culling. Whenever Apocalypse wakes up, he's going to cull the house. One of the people there is the weakest because Apocalypse is all about the fittest, survival of the fittest. He wants the fittest of his family. So the lessers aside, the lessers stay out, but of the fittest, he's going to kill one of the fittest. The weakest of the fittest, the least of the fittest. So it's this one girl. He kills her. It's like, no, not me. Meanwhile, there's this guy over there who's actually belted in. He's got a belt in there. He's got like reddish hair and whatnot and his green eyes. And he's like, belted in and whatnot. And it's like, dude, what the frick? What the frick is going on? Why is this guy not being killed? Well, Apocalypse doesn't like the people with gray skin. Apocalypse himself has gray skin. Go figure. But Apocalypse doesn't like the gray tinted skin. So a little bit racist. So he kills her instead. And it's like, okay, now we can continue. So they go off and they have this conversation. This is the High Council, mind you. So there's this new guy, Brashear, I think his name is. It's not important. He dies pretty soon. He's this huge dude, all right? About as big as Hamilton was. He's like, well, I'm the fittest, so I'm going to take over. Hamilton's mother's like, wrong answer. Mind you, Frederick, the guy with the orange hair and the green eyes, the guy who was belted in, that's Frederick and Hamilton's brother. So these two are brothers. Hamilton's the guy who went off and he's missing for 3 days. So Brashear is like, Mama Slade, listen, you don't want me in charge? Who would you rather be in charge? Frederick over there, the cripple, the one who can't talk, you'd rather him be in charge? Be easier for you to manipulate him instead of your other son, Hamilton, wouldn't it? So she's like, oh, how dare you? So she turns into the vicey thing. She starts like slicing him up. The other dude, grabs his hand into a vice grip and grabs her and starts trying to crush her head. She's like, submit or else I'll crush you. I'll pop your head like a cherry. She's like, I submit. Apocalypse is ticked. He's infuriated right now. He's like, enough of this. Like, I'm sick and tired of your stupid little squabbles. They mean less than nothing to me. I want to know what's going on right now. Who's killing my family members? All of a sudden, Jake Starsmore comes in. It's like, you, a lesser in here? He's like, I'm sorry. It would be easier to just address you instead of going through the ranks. Master Apocalypse. It would be easier to just address you. It's like, make it quick. Also, the old dude comes in. It's like, you brought a mortal in here? Turns out this is actually Van Helsing, Abraham Van Helsing, and he knows Apocalypse. He walks up, he looks at him, he's like smiling. He's like, you're kind of confirming my suspicions from all these years ago that you are actually a vampire. He's like, well, I'm not a vampire. Those are superstition. Shut up. So one thing leads to another, and he's like, listen, this is not only vampires, this is actually Dracula himself who's going around killing your family members, Clan Aqaba. He's like, vampires aren't real. Now, mind you, Apocalypse is super, I know he's a mutant, all this stuff, you'd figure he'd believe it, but he's super steeped in science. And vampires are as mystical gets. They're genuinely a occult creature. It would be like believing in ghosts, except you can believe in ghosts because you can travel on the astral plane. Apocalypse knows this. But vampires? Come on. There's nothing based on science for that, so he refuses to believe it. Anyway, Van Helsing's like, well, come with me to the mortuary. So they go. And then the members of Clan Aqaba who were killed are now vampires. So I want you to understand this. They've all got their molecular manipulation abilities, plus they're vampires. So they're like crawling on the ceiling, turning into things and attacking him. They actually jack up Apocalypse really bad. He's hurt. He's just fresh out the rejuvenation chamber, and his rejuvenation has not been finished. He woke up on the wrong side of the rejuvenation chamber. He's infuriated, but he's also, very weak, very tired right now. He gets jacked up. Bad. Anyway, he's able to recover from it, whatevs. And what happens? Oh, at this point, we also learn that Jack he doesn't have the ability to manipulate his body. He can breathe fire instead. Kind of helpful. This is not World of Darkness, so vampires can be hurt by fire, but it's not a final way of killing them. Silver and a wooden stake through the heart. That's the way to actually put down a vampire, or crosses, any kind of holy symbol. Actually, if you like Kitty Pryde, if you believe in the Jewish faith, you can use the Star of David. You know what I'm saying? So anything, and as long as you have actual faith in it. So anyway, they and the end of book 2 ends with Hamilton showing up back home to his mother. She opens up Hamilton House and it's like, "Mother, I'm home." It's like, "Oh, my dear, where have you been?" It's like, "I'm okay. Plus, I brought a guest," and it's Dracula himself. That's how book 2 ends. Now, book 3 opens up with the crew return home. The crew that went out to the mortuary, they return home to Alexander House, and they see that everybody's dead, including Brashear, whatever his name was. I told you he was going to be dead pretty soon. But he wasn't turned. In fact, almost everybody there was turned. Only Brashear is left dead. It's like, what's going on? It's like, he hasn't been drained. Instead, it looks like his throat's been torn out. Van Helsing's like, listen, this was some kind of an actual vengeance thing. Like, vampires will usually turn other people to increase their army. But if there's some kind of vendetta, like a grudge, they'll just tear your throat out and let you die, let you bleed out and die. And that's what happened. Hamilton decided to just tear his throat out. He didn't even want him to be a vampire. He didn't want any contendership because, yeah. So, go frickin' figure. So he just kills him. So these guys are sitting there talking, and of course Apocalypse just like, he doesn't believe it. He absolutely refuses to believe it. But all of a sudden, Hamilton and a bunch of the other newly acquired vampires from House Akaba, Clan Akaba, bust in through the doors and through the floors and everything. And it's like, what? It's like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to, scare you like that. I just always want to make an entrance like that. Anyway, he's more powerful than he ever was. And he comes straight up to Apocalypse and he attacks him. Apocalypse is, at first it seems like he's having a hard time because he's just like, wow, you really are fit. Nice. You would have been great for this, unfortunately. And Hamilton, meanwhile, is talking trash the whole time. He's like, you think you're so tough, but I'm better than you. Ha ha ha, especially now. And he thinks he's about to kill him. But all of a sudden, boom, there's a gunshot. He's like, what the hell's going on? And then he looks, and Apocalypse turned his hand into a gun. Yeah. Much like, these guys are all, if you're one of the fittest, you got the abilities of the liquid metal Terminator, the T-1000. You know what I'm saying? But Apocalypse is the fittest. And he can actually turn to gun. He can actually release parts of himself into projectiles and more. He can do all sorts of crazy things. And he'll just heal the damage of losing a part of himself. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how sick he is. So he's like, shut up. And he's boom, 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 boom with his, giant-sized freaking arm cannon. So he's almost like Megatron in this from Transformers. All right, so that happens, but just when he's about to give the killing blow, the vampire grabs him from behind, and he gets overwhelmed. He actually gets overwhelmed. The other guys jump in and like, hey, and I should also mention Frederick was left untouched. He's not fit. He's not considered worthy of anything, so they literally left him untouched there. Well, as they're getting overwhelmed, they all get teleported out. The reason why I remembered Frederick all of a sudden is because Frederick is the one who's able to teleport them. Yeah. Frederick used to have the ability to do all these things. Now, Ozymandias, is very different from the Watchman Ozymandias. Ozymandias is the scribe of Apocalypse. He's blessed and cursed with immortality, and he's got granite-like skin, so he's like the sands. And his job is just inscribe hieroglyphs and pictures of what happens throughout the history. And he's sitting there talking. He's like, not too many people know this, but Frederick used to be more fit than Hamilton. He was much more fit. He wasn't as big, but he was stronger. He was better. He was the fittest. We honestly thought that he was going to be the best. And he had the ability, nobody knew this. I knew this. Almost nobody knew this. He had the ability to teleport. He had the ability even Apocalypse didn't have. Like, that's sick. So they go and Frederick falls asleep one day in his room. Hamilton shows up, turns his fist into a hammer, and beats him like about the brain, about the back, paralyzes him, cripples him, jacks this guy up, permanently with brain damage, and then makes him a high council member as an example. So anybody tries to, challenge him, that's what I will do to you. So rather than just have him killed, he puts him as a high council member instead, so as a permanent Just so you know, if I did this to my brother, what will I do to you? So Hamilton's sick, dude. He's sick. Anyway, so they all go to this like bar. He teleports them to this bar and guest house kind of place. It's all the same, pretty much. And they're trying to put garlic on the windows and all this other stuff. They're trying to do everything they can. They're trying to get wooden stakes together from, broken parts of furniture. And it's like, do you have any other weapons that you can use? And Van Helsing's like, yeah. And he looks up, at the night sky. He's like, but it won't be here for a couple hours. So he's referring to the sun. I love the foreshadowing in this. This is actually really good. This isn't necessarily like a horror comic. The art is way too bright for that. But it's good. And it's a good example of a lot of powers in here. Clan Akoba's powers and Dracula's powers. You're going to see that. So they get attacked. There's this huge attack that comes. Everybody's doing the best they can to fight. And at one point, everything is coming at them. Rats are coming at them. Bats are coming at them. Wolves are coming at them. Other vampires are coming at them. Parts of Clan Akoba is coming at them. Everything's coming at them. A freaking kitchen sink grows legs and comes at them. Doesn't really happen, but practically. So in the scuffle, the sunlight comes up and the bad guys flee. So now they're going to go back. Van Helsing's with them, mind you. So he says, let's go back to Alexander House. It's like, but that's where they're all at. It's like, yeah, I know, but it's daytime. So they go down. There are a bunch of coffins there, and they go down and they just destroy everyone and everything that's down there. Hamilton is not there. All right. So they go down there and just destroy all those vampires, and then they burn down Alexander House. So that solves that. And this is book 3, mind you, and book 3 ends with Van Helsing noticing 2 puncture marks on Apocalypse's neck. He's like, Dracula bit you. He's like, some bat bit me. It's no big deal. It's like, that was Dracula. And he's like, well, whatever. Dracula is in Transylvania right now. He's like, gee, how do you know that, Apocalypse? He's like, I don't know. I just feel it. You always know where your master is. So, book 4 shows happens, and these guys all teleport to Transylvania. They're immediately attacked by villagers. Like, how did they know? And Apocalypse is just sick of this, so they start shooting at him. Then he absorbs the bullets and brings them up into his mouth, and spits the bullets out and kills all these freaking peasant villagers. So it's like, how did he know that I was here? How did he know that we were here? Well, it turns out the master always knows where the servant is. So Apocalypse is actually their biggest strength, but also their greatest weakness in this. I love that. That is great. So, Dracula actually, what do you call it? So Van Helsing notices that Apocalypse is weak right now. He actually drops to a knee. He's very tired right now. He's like, yeah, Dracula's bite has made you weaker. So Apocalypse gets infuriated. You dare call me weak? He picks him up. He's about to, he pulls out, turns his hand into this big, freaking disgusting, terrifying torture device. He's about to rip him into shreds. His own mother wouldn't recognize him. You know what I'm saying? He's about to destroy him. And suddenly a lightning bolt separates them. And it's Dracula standing right there. He's like, hey, remember me? It's like, oh, you son of a gun. You're putting me through all this nonsense? How dare you? So he goes up and he tries to attack him. But he turns to mist. He's like, yeah, I would let you kill. I do want Van Helsing dead. The problem is that he and I have an old grudge, and I'm going to kill him personally. So you're going to find out that's a mistake. He should have just let him kill, or just killed him right there, or had the lightning bolt hit him directly. Anyway, but he wants to torture him. That's Dracula. He's a sadistic SOB, and that's probably one of his biggest weaknesses. He doesn't just want to kill you if you've proven to be an enemy. He remembers you, and he wants you to suffer for a long time, a really long time. So, Dracula, so Apocalypse face me like a man. It's like, you're not a man. You're a mutant, Homo superior, and I'm Homo, what do they call that? Vampirus, whatever. Anyway, so, he's just like, yeah, no, I'm going to face you at Castle Dracula. See you there. So he disappears. Well, that gives Apocalypse enough time to not get his 4 horsemen. That takes a long time. He's actually got to be awake for a long time and study people and all this stuff. And most of his house is dead. So he doesn't have a chance to just go and grab a bunch of people and make them into horsemen. Plus, it would take a lot of energy from him, energy that he doesn't have right now. But he can go and grab his Riders of the Storm, currently called Riders of the Dark. So he does grab them. He does summon them. So now you got Castle Dracula, swaths of vampires and rats, bats, wolves, and dogs, anything you could imagine, and the Riders of the Dark. And they go at it with each other. These other knuckleheads, Apocalypse goes directly into the castle, and we're going to get to that combat in a moment. Hamilton Slade goes directly after... Oh, by the way, Hamilton Slade actually killed his own mother just recently, just like moments ago, because she's all like getting in Dracula's face saying, you think that you're so tough and blah, 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 but my son is such and such. And Dracula's just smiling. He's like, ugh. So Hamilton, whether it's under the control of Dracula or not, he goes and he tears out her throat with his teeth. So, yeah, and just leaves her to die there. Vengeful. Vengeful. Doesn't even turn into a vampire. Dracula doesn't need that kind of nonsense. And she does have a strong will. And if you have a particularly strong will, you can go against Dracula. You can resist his mind control. Well, I guess maybe he does. I'm just speculating this. I guess he just doesn't want to risk it with her. So anyway, Hamilton goes after these guys. He's about to kill all these guys. The fire that Starsmore is spitting out isn't doing anything. He's overwhelming them. Well, Frederick reaches forward and grabs his head, and you think he's going to snap his neck. Well, he kind of does, but he also blinks it out of existence. You just hear blink, and it disappears. He teleports his head away. So blood starts spurting out, and he's dead now. You remove the head of a vampire, man. It's not a permanent death, but it is a death, And who knows where that head got teleported to, like deep space or something. Anyway, so... now we go to Dracula and Apocalypse. They face off with each other, and Apocalypse does this thing. He actually gives this really cool compliment to him. He's like, nobody's given me as much trouble as you have. Take that with you to your grave. And he forms a big javelin on his hand and charges forward, gets that close to Dracula's head, and Dracula's just smiling the whole time, doesn't even flinch. Apocalypse is like, why can't I kill you? Master servant. So Dracula just kind of goes, kneel. And he does. If you're a huge Apocalypse fan, you're going to be like, oh, no. Listen, Dracula has always been considered an incredible villain throughout time, throughout history. All right. There have been, Bram Stoker is not the first person to write a vampire story. He just wrote the best vampire story. All right. Vampires have existed long before that. All right. And go back to the Max Schreck days of Nosferatu and all that, and way before. Vampires have been a myth in the Romania area, Transylvania area, for eons, it feels like. You know what I'm saying? So when Dracula was able to come to Marvel Comics finally, the Comics Code Authority allowed it. There was a swath, Morbius the Living Vampire, all this stuff. I'm thinking Mobius strip. Anyway, Morbius the Living Vampire came. That was a big deal, really big deal. And when Dracula came, that was huge. And it was a terrifying book. People actually used to get scared reading the book and whatnot. It is what it is. You know what I'm saying? And if you're one of those older readers, like probably older than I am, you're going to attest to this and be like, yes, 100%. If you've gone back and actually read those, maybe it won't be as scary because, it's a vampire story, whatever. It's not like a jump scare, Friday the 13th type scare or a Grudge type scare or anything like that. It's not like Insidious. Horror has changed over the years, but Marvel has always been about giving respect to every older comic book character, including Dracula. And Apocalypse, as powerful as he just came out of his rejuvenation chamber, came out early. His house had been pretty much destroyed, and he got bit. So and he doesn't believe in Dracula. He doesn't believe in him being a vampire. He doesn't believe that vampires are magical. He's just like, there's some kind of a scientific explanation. I just haven't gotten to it yet. I got this guy Sinister working on it, though. So, yeah, Apocalypse kneels. Now, when this happens, Dracula goes up and he's about to bite him. Now, this is for the second time. You bite him 3 times, then boom, he becomes like yours forever. forever, or he's just going to drain him and kill him. Whatever he's going to do, he doesn't get the chance, because before his fangs actually touch this second time, he gets holy water splashed on him. Yeah, he should have killed Van Helsing. So he's just like, you son of a gun, and he gets distracted just enough, and a lesser person would have still been in the hypnotic state. Not so with Apocalypse. He gets up and he just impales him. Yeah, Vlad the Impaler was impaled. And then he cuts off his head. So Van Helsing runs up. He's like, okay, now you got to separate the head from the body. Burn the body. And he starts going into the typical spew that he always goes into, that like the way to permanently kill a vampire. It's like, we're finally going to murder, Dracula permanently. Nope. He gets grappled by Apocalypse. He holds him up again. And he's like, you called me weak, and I'm not going to believe in your stupid superstitions. And he drops him and he walks away. And it mentions, why did he let him go? Maybe it was a sort of respect. You know what I'm saying? It's like you interfered with his battle, but at the same time, he recognized that you saved his life, so therefore he'll let you live, whatever. But Apocalypse just walks away. His clan is now destroyed. The only person left is Frederick, and he doesn't believe that he's good for anything, So Ozymandias is still around. Jake is actually Jack Stratsmore is still there, but he's a lesser. So Dracula's just of the opinion, Apocalypse was of the opinion of, you know what, my clan is destroyed. That sucks. When I come, and his rejuvenation chamber was destroyed. Hamilton didn't wait, and Dracula didn't waste any time with that. So he's got to, he's got to build a new rejuvenation chamber and rejuvenate properly. Then he can maybe start working on rebuilding his clan again. That's a shame. That kills him. That's terrible. That's horrible for him. Traumatic. That's the word I'm looking for. Anyway, so, only half an hour. Not bad. Got through 4 comics in half an hour. I'm pretty impressed. Anyway, so the end of this comic, the end of the 4th and final issue of this miniseries is he just goes off into nowhere. Van Helsing tells Jack, he's like, hey, listen, man, I'm going to leave now. You have some fun with yourself. Stay off that opium, which he does, apparently. We don't know. And he's like, I'm going to go off into Canada. I heard that there's some big white fuzzy creature eating people. So he's talking about the Wendigo. Nice. Maybe that eventually leads into the, that's actually the first Wendigo story. Maybe that'll eventually lead into the first appearance of Wolverine. And this is an X-Men comic after all. Go figure. It is X-Men Apocalypse versus Dracula. And then was there anything else? No, the final ending is that Ozymandias hires this woman of the night, this worker, pays her to go in and procreate. Her name is Miss Ferguson, to procreate with Frederick. So apparently things work. So the clan will continue. He himself may not have been seen as fit because of, his crippling and whatnot, but he was the fittest. He was absolutely the fittest. His DNA hasn't changed. So that moves on. Now, what they don't explain in here is that, I told you, he's got the reddish hair, like pink red hair, and he's got the green eyes. This is a descendant. This is an ancestor for Blink. And you can check out Blink explained in a minute, hopefully in the description below. So yeah, this is actually, Blink actually comes from that long line of Clan Aqaba. That's one of the reasons why she's so powerful, as ridiculously powerful as she is. And she's got the red hair, the pink red hair, whatever, the green eyes and all that stuff. And then also the markings on her. And if it's allowed to go properly, it's the markings of Clan Aqaba. Yeah. It's cool how all these things, work together like that, right? Anyway, this was an amazing comic book for me. Ozymandias continues doing his job and whatnot, but he doesn't let him know. He doesn't let Apocalypse know that, hey, it turns out your family's going to continue. Anyway, that's the story. And for me, I know a lot of people, I know there are a lot of Apocalypse diehards out there, but let's be realistic. Was this, if you love Apocalypse and you hate anybody who could possibly get one over on him, you're probably, even more upset at the idea of X-Men. What is that? Not Days of Future Past. X-Men Apocalypse. There we go. That one. So is what it is. And I'm not here to defend anything except to say that I am a huge fan of the Marvel Dracula and a huge fan of the Apocalypse. So this to me was just great. It was great. Now, Dracula at full power versus Apocalypse at full power. Hard to say how that would go. Hard to say how that would go. But check out Dracula Explained in a minute to get a good idea of just how powerful he really is. Anyway, guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.